I tried the low information diet for a week and I saved around 20 hours of time. If you're watching this video, you've probably got something in your life that you want to change, whether that's wanting to spend more time exercising and taking care of yourself, or working on some creative hobby, or maybe you want to start a business or a YouTube channel, or maybe you just want to spend more time with the people in your life that are important. And for whatever reason, you don't have the time. I'm hoping that the information diet will be something that helps you to save time in your week, like it has done for me. The information diet is part of the elimination phase of the 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. It also is part of a book called The Artist Way. In week 4, there's a recommendation to go on a reading deprivation, and this can be linked more broadly into the information diet. I think we're not fully aware of how much information we are consuming day to day. Information is very sneaky, it's ever prevalent in the society that we live in today, and it's not always something that's good for us. The information diet is essentially a detox from information. It's not necessarily something that you have to keep up forever, but the idea is that when you detox completely from it, you can then decide going forward what you do want to include, and you can be more conscious in your consumption of information. I think for the most part, people who go through this detox will feel like, actually, I don't really want to add any of these things back in. Not only does this save you time in that you'll be freeing up large pockets of time, it drastically improves your mood, which I think is so much more important than the idea of having free time. I think most of us are aware that we have time. We know that there are pockets of time going towards things that we don't want it to go towards, and yet for some reason we don't feel like we can stop ourselves from doing that because we need distractions to help us feel better, even though they don't. And I think the information diet really reduces a lot of the reasons why we need those distractions. It's this kind of continuing source where you're letting go of the distractions, which is improving your mood, which means you no longer need as many distractions, which further improves your mood. And then you'll start to fill up your time with the things that you want to be doing. When I did this information diet, again, so much time was freed up that at first it can be really uncomfortable because you'll have all of this spare time that you don't know what to do with. And over even the course of a few days, but probably longer, you'll find yourself picking up different activities that you wouldn't usually do. For example, I'm someone who really struggles with keeping up the cleanliness of the home. It's something I really struggle to do, especially the kind of larger tasks like cleaning the bathroom. These are things that I will avoid at all possible costs. After I started doing the information diet, I now didn't have anything to distract myself with to avoid doing this anymore. I found myself just saying, hey, I guess I'll clean the bathroom because there's nothing else to do. Or I guess I'll clean out my closet because there's nothing else to do. Or do you know what, maybe I will work on a YouTube video because actually the night is young and I have plenty of time to do this. And these are all things that a couple months ago I certainly would not be doing in my evenings. I've been having so much more enjoyment day to day. I think if you look at like pictures of me from earlier in the year versus now, you can see the enjoyment that has been achieved from this low information diet. I'm going to be giving some examples of different things that you would cut out during this time and why they will make you more productive and how much time approximately I saved from cutting out each of these. One thing to limit is informative media. I'm defining informative media as any media that gives you information. I think a lot of the time the information that we're exposed to can be really detrimental to our day. If we think about something like the news, and if you start your day watching the news or reading the news or catching up with the news on Twitter, whatever way that you're getting in this kind of world news, inevitably most of what you're going to be seeing is negative. If you get news first thing in the morning about some fatal car accident or some other tragic event, it's naturally going to negatively impact your mood. That's going to influence whether we can spend our free time doing things that we enjoy or things that are productive versus things that aren't. I think there is a lot of people who feel like they need to be informed about what's going on in the world, and realistically you don't. Since I've stopped consuming any kind of news media, and to be honest, I didn't consume much of it anyways, I personally don't feel like I have needed that information, because when there's something important going on in the world, people will tell me about it because other people are watching the news and reading up on the news. When I hear about these things from other people, I don't feel like I needed to know them a lot of the time. I think because there's a sense of information without action, that can leave us with this uncomfortable feeling. So you're just left with this information that you're not going to do anything about. When it comes to election, for example, rather than me following every single thing that's happened up until this point, I can ask somebody who I know who is interested in the news and politics, and ask several people that I know that have this knowledge that I then can get from them when it's important. It also includes social media. Even if you're just following people that you know on social media, friends and family, inevitably this is going to be informative about other people's lives and what's going on in other people's lives. That information can be something that negatively impacts us. We are often seeing all the lives of all these other people and comparing them to our own lives, and we're seeing these trips that people are going on and comparing it to ourselves sitting on the couch watching these people live these amazing lives that they don't really live. The other side of informative media that I think will surprise a lot of people is around that kind of positive self-help or productivity content like this video. All of this kind of content, whether that's a podcast or an audiobook or anything that's helping you to improve your life, again, this is linked to the idea of the news where information without action leaves us with dissatisfaction. Whoa, that's a good tagline. Information without action leaves us with dissatisfaction. When we are consuming this media and we're not using the stuff that's in the media that we've consumed, whether that's a book or a podcast, it's just a distraction at the end of the day if we're not using this information. What we can do instead is keep hold of these concepts that we might eventually explore, but wait until it's the right time. For example, I first read The 4-Hour Workweek several years ago, where the concepts were not relevant to me because I was not in the kind of job that the 4-Hour Workweek benefits from. I was in a completely research-based role where the book just didn't really make sense for that job because I'm never going to be able to get my research down to 4 hours a week. Now that I run a company and I'm spending pretty much my entire time doing administrative work, the 4-Hour Workweek is very relevant to me because there is a lot of work that I can eliminate or automate or delegate. And now I can read that book and learn the concepts. I think if you're going to read a book, only do that if it's going to be relevant, if you're going to implement what's in it. And if you're not going to implement what's in it, leave it until that time that you're ready to implement it. Read a summary in the meantime when you're deciding whether or not you can consume that media. Other kinds of information that we can receive that we would like to limit would be notifications of communication. So that could be phone notifications or email notifications, but we want to limit these also as much as possible. I used to check my notifications first thing in the morning when I woke up because I'm a highly anxious person, and I felt that if I knew what was in my email inbox and I knew there was nothing insanely huge going on, then I could relax and enjoy my morning. But actually what happened was I would check the inbox, there wouldn't be anything massive going on because nothing that we receive should be that important because we are not a medical practice. We don't have people's lives in our hands. We would have all of these smaller issues maybe cropping up, or questions that I had to answer, or things that I needed to make some decision about. Being exposed to these first thing in the morning used to leave me with so much more worry than not knowing what's going on. I used to think that the information of what was going on would be helpful for me, but actually it was a huge hindrance. And I think that this is the number one thing that has improved my mood and my happiness over the last couple of months is not checking my inbox until 11 a.m. It's made such a difference because I've learned to be more comfortable in the not knowing and in the uncertainty. And now I really enjoy my mornings. I would say before I was using this practice, I would spend the 2 hours of my morning, let's say 5 days a week, in this uncomfortable state because of this knowledge. I'd say probably only twice a week maybe my morning was ruined. So let's say that saved me 4 hours a week just from the emotional impact of knowing what's going on in the inbox when I am planning on working on it. And I'd say that also extends into my evening time. So I'd say in total, anywhere between 5 to 10 hours a week were spent in this state of discomfort because of these pieces of information I was getting at the wrong times of the day. Not only is this important from a mood perspective, but it links into another productivity tip around not constantly responding to emails because of the idea of context switching. So when we switch context in our different tasks throughout the day, this slows our brain down, it slows down our productivity. So if we have some big project that we're meant to be working on, and let's say we ideally want to be putting in 4 hours of solid work a day on project, if throughout the workday we're getting emails, we're responding to them, maybe we're also getting messages on our phone, we're responding to those, every time that we do this, this reduces our productivity. Because when we return to this task that requires a lot of focus, we've already lost some focus because of doing this less focused work. This brings in a bunch of different productivity books, Getting Things Done, which talks about organizing your to-do list by context to avoid that context switching. Also bringing in the book Deep Work by Cal Newport, which talks about making sure that you leave unbothered blocks of deep work so that your shallow work, things like emails, aren't getting in the way of that focus time so that you can get into the flow with whatever it is that you want to work on. I think an important learning point in this is just that emails don't need to be responded to immediately. People can wait. It's not the end of the day. If people can't wait for the response, then that's probably a sign that there's some sort of administrative assistant needed whose job can be specifically to do that work. If you're meant to be working on these really focused projects, then you don't have time for that, and your work would be much better spent on that than on responding to emails straight away. The book encourages you to have conversations with people to say, look, I'm trying to work on this stuff, and if you keep bothering me, I will not be able to do that. So whether that's with managers or with clients, to be really clear about when the times are that you are going to be responding to emails, and outside of that, they can just wait. The part of the information diet that I was not expecting to be so hard or to really be aware of it as I was going through the process was Googling time. I, again, am quite an anxious person, but I also get very obsessed about things. And when I start a Google of something, that can easily take 20 minutes. Easily. I would say at least once a day, I'm spending 20 plus minutes Googling something. So taking that into account in an entire week, I would say there's 2 or 3 hours of time spent Googling things. That even feels like a serious underestimation. What I decided to do to improve this habit, I will keep track of a list of to Google things, and these are then things that I can later on research, but they just go into my to-do list. And most of the time I'll find later on when it's time, when I'm allowing myself that time to do that Googling, I'll usually find that actually it's not that important and I don't need to do that. And that's just time saved overall. The final part of this is pleasurable media. So that would include TV or books that you are reading or watching for fun only. So non-informative media. These should also be limited. The book, The 4-Hour Workweek, recommends that you can watch 1 hour of TV in the evenings for, again, pleasure time only. And you can do 1 hour of reading of fiction for pleasure only before bed. At the beginning of the year, I cut out TV completely, apart from the bits of time that I'd be watching TV with my partner. We used to watch a lot more TV, but I've reduced that. Even when we're watching TV together, we're only watching usually just one episode of something. So I hadn't been watching TV by myself at all in this portion of the year. I actually reintroduced TV during the information diet because there was so little of anything that I was wanting something. And I started watching the show The Talented Mr. Ripley, and it was really nice to just sit down and watch one episode a day of that show, and I really thoroughly enjoyed it, and I feel like I was completely present the whole time. If you're going to be watching this piece of TV, that's the only thing you're doing. You're not on your phone, you're not sitting down with a notebook coming up with ideas for things. This is just time to do this one thing. I think reading for fun is something that people will be really unsettled with, the idea of cutting that down. And again, it's not something that you necessarily have to do forever. It's something to try for a week if you're somebody who reads a lot. In this book, The Artist Way, they talk about a reading deprivation, and they say that a lot of the creative people will be really against this idea at first. But there's a couple of nice kind of quotes from this book. It is a paradox that by emptying our lives of distractions, we are actually filling the well. Without distractions, we are once again thrust into the sensory world. With no newspaper to shield us, a train becomes a viewing gallery. With no internet to read, we have more time on our hands. With no novel to sink into, and no television to numb us out, an evening becomes a vast savannah in which furniture and other assumptions get rearranged. Now that you have all of this free time, what do you do with it? Well, that is the tricky thing. I would recommend trying not to force yourself to do anything at first. Try not to fill these times with specific things. Try not to say, okay, I'm definitely going to go to the gym during this time or whatever it is. At first, I think leave this time open, because it's an important experience to feel that sense of having free time and knowing that actually you have a lot of control in your life and in what you're going to do with it when you could experience these pockets of dead time. They're really uncomfortable, but they're important to feel. Start to feel that feeling of having a couple hours free in the morning and in the evening and at the weekend, and see what that feels like and see what ends up happening. I think you'll be surprised by all of the different things that you can achieve in that time that you might not have done without having that feeling of free time. And I really hope that whatever you choose to do in that time brings you an immense amount of joy and improves your life in other ways.